Hello, good people, and welcome to the Higher Living Podcast. Today is a very, very special day, as it always is on the Higher Living Podcast. We've got an old friend of mine / colleague / someone that I look up to in quite a lot of ways by the name of Gareth Rees that's joined us on the show today. Gareth and I met many moons ago. We both worked in the same corporate environment. And Gareth was a guy that was leading and pioneering the sourcing and identification of some of the globe's leading technologies, but not just pioneering them by finding them and sourcing them, but by incubating them and taking them into market as feasible businesses that are investable, that have the opportunities and the modalities to grow. And he's really been the guy that's been, always. I mean, what I know about Gareth is he's always looking at innovation and always looking at how we make our lives easier. And coupled to that, he's got a very strong background in management consulting for one of the largest global players. He was recently the CEO of a very interesting technology that we'll talk about in a few seconds. But Gareth, not to steal any more of your thunder, how are you doing this afternoon?
Far too kind there, Sean. Thank you for the introduction. I hope I can live up to your intro.
Yeah, the one thing I didn't mention is Gareth is also an avid petrol head like myself.
We share the same disease. Better than gambling and drugs.
Exactly. We share the disease where we are fueled by the smell of, burning clutches and fossil fuel being burnt to a crisp. Gareth, he has also had some amazing vehicles over the course of his time. The last vehicle that you had, Gareth, the Lumina, and you
Yes.
had it, you crate motored in a Corvette engine, and you were putting that in to your Lumina.
Yeah, I did that. Not a particularly good financial decision, but I had lots of fun.
Yeah, but that's the thing about cars, right? It's never a good financial decision.
No, it never is. It never is. Although some people have made some good money on cars. If you look at the Haggy Index, I think you'll see that some people invest into that space and do quite well. But the problem is that then you need to own these nice cars and not drive them. And that's not my style.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's the point in, like, for me, and each to their own, but for me, speculating on cars doesn't really do it for me.
Yeah.
Like you say, if you look at some of these amazing cars that have been brought out, the technology in them and the driving experience is what needs to be experienced, and appreciated, not the market value. And that's just our opinion. I think we're purists in that regard.
I think you're right there. Not everyone shares that, but I think that's why we like each other too, Sean.
Yeah, that's it. So, Mr. Rees, it's been a good couple of years since we last caught up. And I think, our listeners are so blessed to have someone with your mindset on the show. But before we get into the detail of Gareth Rees, why don't you tell us a bit about, how your story commenced? And, I met you when we worked for one of the large consulting players. And how did you get? I don't actually even know how you got into that environment. And how did your story begin?
Okay, so that's a broad question, and probably that's appropriate. So I think, firstly, something that is important to acknowledge is the privilege that I have had growing up. My parents are not wealthy, but they sent me to a private school, and I never wanted for anything. So I feel that I'm really privileged for my education and having parents that are still together and still loving and a great family. So I think that's my background, and it took me a long time to realize what a privilege that was, and I think that's how it started. So, but for me, where it becomes interesting is from when I went to university. So the first thing I studied was actually biochemistry, right? Because I read an article once. When was it? When I was finishing school. So that's like in 2000 now, about how the future was going to be in biotechnology. And it was the time of Dolly the sheep and cloning and genomics and stem cell research. And I just thought, wow, this world just sounds like a totally incredible world. And I decided I'd get into biochemistry, and I loved the courses. And however, when I got to the end, being in a lab and having to run experiments day in and day out is a far cry from the exciting stuff you read on the papers. You don't realize that, innovation takes decades to turn into exciting things. And I realized the lab wasn't for me. So I decided to do a bit of a pivot. And actually, while I was at university, I had developed a product, a cockroach pesticide that I worked with my mother's domestic lady at the time, and we called it Mama Roach. And it was a very simple product using boric acid as an active ingredient with potato mash. And we sold it through the taxi ranks and informal, not informal, but through the large flats where they have the biggest cockroach problems. And actually, that business was doing quite well. And then I wanted to try and commercialize that business. This was kind of the first touch of entrepreneurship that I had, and started running at this idea full time. And then realized that cockroaches in South Africa are only there for half the year, so you only have revenue for half the year. And then if you want to actually try get money for the other half of the year, you need to expand and scale and go into other countries that have different kind of patterns of weather. But then I didn't have any real IP in this thing, and you realize this is a great little lifestyle business, but it can never turn into anything of value. So actually, my mother's domestic ended up taking that business, and she still runs it and does relatively well off it. And I pivoted into something else. I went down to Cape Town. A friend of mine there had a production studio doing digital production, and he believed there was a big opportunity for creating a small digital film studio, because there were obviously the very big film studios down in Cape Town, and then really nothing in the middle. So he said, look, this is a great opportunity. Let's co-invest. Let's do this. So I went down and we bought a little or rented out a long-term lease on a little warehouse in Maitland, and we converted into a digital film studio, and we started hustling and operating. And then I just realized that it just wasn't a particularly good business. It's just the very, very seasonal, and the film market was coming, but it was still emerging. And even when people had come out, they already had a lot of plans. So we realized that business basically would wash its own face as well. And I hadn't done a proper business due diligence on this, right? So I ended up getting rid of that business. Didn't lose anything, but didn't make anything either. And then I'm like, okay, and I've now been playing with this entrepreneurship stuff for a while, and I still enjoy it, but it doesn't seem I'm very good at it. At the same time, not realizing that these lessons and the learnings I was getting at that time would be some of the most important lessons that I'd ever receive. But feeling like a bit of a failure, leveraged some networks to put myself through an MBA. And I did an MBA so that I had some business experience. And directly after that, I joined the professional services business that you and I worked at, Sean. And the intention was to just be there for a while, get some experience, and then pivot out again into this kind of entrepreneurship thing. So that was really how I ended up being in the same place as you at that time. Long answer to your question.
Okay. No, amazing. And I actually had forgotten that you are a serial entrepreneur. And please forgive me for not including that as part of your introduction, but Gareth Rees is a serial entrepreneur. Now you've just reminded me. I mean, we've had many conversations around your production studio. I didn't know about the pesticide, but that's amazing. But no, it's all coming back to me. But the one point I do want to come back to, and I think that I do want to acknowledge, is that the first point you made around your home environment, and the fact that your parents are still together and you grew up in a loving environment. I agree with you. In today's world, it is so rare, and it is so valuable. And please salute your parents for that feat, because I can tell you, I grew up in a very similar home. My dad worked really hard, and he gave us everything. We were not by no means rich, but he gave us everything, and my parents are still together. And just having that stability as a child
Such an advantage.
makes you, it's worth so much. It really is
Absolutely.
so worth so much. So well done to the Rees family on that one.
No, and just try to pay
Uh,
it forward, right? So, that's why I have a beautiful wife. We're together 15 years, two kids, and, you know, would never consider doing anything that would compromise that family unit, and, can just pay it forward.
No, and Gareth, it's like I've been married 11 years. My wife and I have known each other. We were high school sweethearts, if I can put it that
Awesome.
way, and we've been together since with the time we were kids. But we've been married for 11 years, and we've got 3 kids now. And what I'm saying is completely, I can completely relate to it, because the world that I experience now is quite superficial to the world that we grew up in, because you and I grew up around the same time. And I find that there's so many I mean so many distractions and temptations and all of this in the superficial world. And I think that a lot of people get drawn into it via social media, via materialism, via so many different things. And sometimes just remembering that the basics that we need as human beings, of love, of family, of nurturing, of is sometimes forgotten. And I must be honest, I battle with it sometimes. I battle to integrate into this new world and be comfortable with it, because we are from a different time,
And
and
look,
and so we
on
sound
this,
like
yeah,
own parts now.
but on this point, Sean, and I don't want to like go off on a tangent around this, but if you look at like one of the mega trends around life extension, right? I'm so against it, and I don't mean living healthy to 100, right? Cool, good on you. Go be like the queen and live a long, fulfilling life to 106. But people that want to live on for centuries, I think it's one of the most dangerous things that could ever happen in society. There's a great saying in the scientific community. They say science progresses one death at a time, because basically
Okay.
you get these people that become so eminent in their career, they acquire so much knowledge, they acquire so much dominion over an industry, and then it's very difficult for other ideas to surface and bubble up. And if you had people like these mega billionaires like a Bezos living for 1,000 years, I'm not saying he could, but let's hypothetically go there. Like, he would be so powerful that I think that would be absolutely. I think it's important that people are mortal. We live out our life and then we pass on and we leave it to the next generation. Because I don't necessarily, like you. I don't want to take on too much of this new social media culture. I understand it and I consult about it, but I don't live that way. But
Mm.
the world will change, and it's important that people like you and I influence, but then leave and let pass on the baton.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you see it with your kids. I see it with mine. They are programmed for this new world. They come
That's it.
out
That's it. It's
fully
so easy for
aligned,
them.
fully programmed, fully plugged in.
Yeah, for sure. For
And
sure.
and the crazy thing is that like over the last few years, I've also embraced this concept of mortality
Yeah,
completely.
you have to.
Yeah, you have to, and you have to wake up every morning, and you have to be grateful for opening your eyes and your loved ones opening their eyes, and starting your day with a point of just appreciating that we are all mortal, and we are all at the chosen time going to pass. And again, coming back, and I know I sound like an old fart when I say this constantly, but if you go back to our generation,
Mm.
the number of people that passed due to old age and those sort of things, and natural causes related to age or illness was quite high. But in today's world, it is just anything, any age, it's possible.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
hearing about people, kids that have
Yeah,
got
yeah,
severe cancers,
yeah.
severe
It's
diseases.
terrifying.
It is terrifying, man. It really, really is terrifying. And the reality of the situation is that we just need to, the way I look at it is that, we need, in some ways, we live in a bubble, and I'm sure you live in a bubble as well.
Mm.
Live in the bubble. I embrace the bubble,
Mm.
and I'm happy in the bubble. and we just try and work from there. Because I mean, and now we digress again. But now, if you look at like what's happening with the power situation, you look at what's happening with our local infrastructure, and you look at what's happening just generally around us, man, it's a lot of negativity, G.
Yeah, it really is. And the CEO of MMI came out the other day on the front day of the business day saying that they're really struggling with the wealth exodus and the wealth products that they're able to sell, and people taking long-term perspectives and money really leaving the country. And then you think about what's happening with Eskom and what heavy industry in their right minds would want to come here. And I think there's a lot of negativity that can envelop you there. And I think what's quite interesting for me is that I'm feeling quite positive at the moment for a number of different reasons. And it's not because I don't see what's going on around me. Obviously, it's clear. There are potholes everywhere. I think particularly Joburg. I just flew in from Cape Town now, and I think it's looking a bit better. But it's obvious to see we have worries about the political climate. We have worries about the sustainability of our country going forward, the brain drain, all those things, right? But I'm feeling so incredibly positive at the moment because what I've realized is that my skills are so needed here. Like the ability for me to get involved in the most powerful conversations that are shaping industries and are shaping economies. There's really big stuff to do, and I've spent quite a bit of time in Europe, and it's so different. Like, I'll give you an example. When I went for an interview once for another one of the big four consultancies in Europe, they didn't really know what to do with my CV because I'd done everything. They're like, "What industries have you been in?" And like, "No, I've done this in power and in healthcare and in mining and in consumer business and in telco and retail." And they're like, "No, but you have to come in and fit into one of these boxes that are here. You need to either be the retail guy or you need to be the consumer guy or the industry guy." And I'm saying no, because innovation is about the collision and dematerialization of industries, and they really battle with this concept. And I think in South Africa we get the ability to solve these incredibly large problems, because the problems that they have in the West are nothing to compare. We're working on a concept now, which I think is so incredibly powerful, called impact innovation. And basically what it's doing is it's saying, how do you use the funds that are available for the social funds, enterprise supplier development, CSI, various training schemes that for the last 20 years have been used to train up a new garden service company or a caterer, and saying, actually, let's take this money, which runs into the billions, even if you include it in dollars, and take young Black companies and young Black specialists that are coming out of universities, find exponential technology, bring those two together, and let the corporate pay for a POC of a drone deployment for precision farming, or opportunity for small batch manufacturing of fertilizer, or a technology like AI that needs metadata tagging, and you can bring in guys from the community. And what you can do is you can actually infuse technology into a very willing population and fund it through funding that isn't available anywhere else in the world. If you look at stuff, the funds that have been put aside for social development, it doesn't exist like that anywhere in the world. So the opportunity for us to actually reframe that thinking and actually drive totally new exponential organizations through that development funding is totally unique to South Africa. And then we can solve challenges like housing and water and education and distributed connectivity and stuff that isn't being solved anywhere else. And I find that incredibly exciting. And I have not found an environment more fertile for innovation anywhere else that I've been, anywhere in the world.
Yeah, it's an amazing perspective. It's made me think a lot as well. Your positivity is just such a breath of fresh air. But I want to ask you a question now in terms of what you just explained. So In the private sector, I get you. Makes sense. It will work. You've got the corporate sponsorship, you've got the budgets, you've got the structures, you've got the governance, you've got all of those good things. How, in your view, how do we get the public sector to operate and to adopt this mindset, but with an approach of actually implementing and with the controls and all of that sort of
Look,
thing?
I only try to solve problems that I know I can solve. So I won't try to solve that one. I will give you an analogy. Okay. If I
Mm,
look at my house now, my house has a UPS and a generator. I
mm,
have a JoJo tank in case the water goes out, and I have a borehole. So I have a private security company that looks after my house. And my kids are at private school. Now, obviously, I'm privileged, as I've mentioned, but if you look at that, I don't consume the services of the state. I have replaced those services with private services, and I think that's what's happening. You're seeing private sector rise up to solve challenges that government is failing at. And you can use that in every single example, from power to education to social development. And I don't want to knock the government because it's really something that I think very little about. I do not think about the government at all. I think about what we could do with the opportunities and the funding that's available for innovation to drive impact.
yeah. And it's such a and I say this I say this loosely, but from what I've experienced, it's such a South African culture to assess the landscape, understand the issues, not get drawn too deeply into the issues, and then make another plan, but move forward.
Yeah.
And I think as a country, we and as South African citizens, that's why our skills and our mindset is so much in demand abroad. I mean, I must be honest. I'm hearing about people immigrating left, right, and center.
Yeah.
And these other countries like Canada and some of the other ones, they are waiting for our people with open arms.
Yeah. Yeah. But those environments, just think how competitive they are. I mean, you want to go move to the US, right? You need to understand that if you perform badly this week, they can just fire you next week.
Yeah.
They can just do that. They can say, sorry, we're right sizing. And they don't give you a letter saying that we're doing this, what process. You're gone. And then if you think it's unfair, you can go to court. But the process is totally different. And then you've got people that are coming there from across the world that are desperate to get in there. The people that are 120 IQ plus got, top scores on all their education stats, and they're hungry because they've moved from India or Africa or China or Asia or whatever to come to the land of the promised and do something great. The level of competition is so insane there. How hard people work. I mean, actually, I don't think anyone understands how much harder people are working in like some of the US environments to what we work here. They're working on average 100 hours a week, and maybe us in France, we're doing 60 or 50. And I just think that, I used to have this ambition when I was young and full of aspiration and aggression to be a Silicon Valley CEO. And even if it wasn't in America, it was somewhere like that. I wanted that life. And I realized that I don't want that life at all. Not even if it was offered to me, because I've seen what it takes to have that life. I've seen the sacrifices that these people make to live those dreams. And you have to be and I don't mean this negatively to other people that have been successful, but you have to actually be quite selfish. You need to leave your family behind. You need to be prepared to work all the time and travel all the time and be 100% selfishly focused on your commercial activity. And that becomes your life and your baby. And that's a life I realized quite early on when I started getting into, scale up. I realized I didn't want that for myself.
Yeah. It's like we sing out of the same hymn book. With age comes wisdom, and you realize that balance is what's actually needed in life.
Sure.
Because the minute you go too extreme, because you can't be on the other end of the spectrum as well. I mean, you can't be, a home dad kind of thing, because then you've got you almost lack a purpose in terms of what you contribute to the world.
No offense to home dads.
No offense to home. I mean, each to their own. I mean, there's many home dads out there.
I can talk about myself. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I find that for me, purpose is so important. Purpose in terms of something
Yeah,
that you contribute to the
exactly.
world.
And on this note, I mean, it's so funny. Like, again, when I was younger, I had this ambition to like retire early because it's like this ego statement, right? Like
Mm, mm, mm,
retire at
mm.
40, and I was like, yeah, that's what I want. And then I'm like, what the hell would I do if I
Yeah,
retired? I mean, I'm 40 now. What would I do if I wasn't working hard? I think I'd be the most bored, depressed person around. And how that's framed. And then when I did my MBA, my strategy lecturer was 80 years old, 80. And
mm,
this guy had, you know, let's call it 65, 60 years worth of real world knowledge, but he had kept himself fresh.
yeah.
His mind, he was lecturing in MBA, you know, and this guy absolutely blew my mind. And one day when I'm done making money, doing corporate stuff, I would love to go and, head up a technology transfer and be a lecturer until I'm
Mm,
80 and
mm.
go in every day and meet these young people that are coming in and hustling. And as I was, myopically chasing this vision and help shape these people, like I would love to do that. And that for me is an evolution of my purpose statement. And it's come with failure. It's only come
Absolutely.
because I failed at stuff. I think if I had succeeded at everything, I would have remained arrogant.
Yeah,
But
and
my failure has allowed me to deal with my ego and, I think move forward.
yeah, and sometimes the mirror of failure is struggle and suffering. And sometimes when we fail, we struggle and we suffer financially, we suffer emotionally. But it's about that picking yourself up and a few years ago I went through something similar where I hit ground zero, and hitting ground zero is an amazing
It's amazing.
feeling. You hit
Yeah.
the floor
Yeah.
because there's nowhere left to go. You can't go any lower.
Mm,
Then you got to pick yourself up and you got
mm,
to be tenacious. You got to reassess. You got to understand what works. You got to actually understand the core of who you are and what value you bring in as the person that you are in your innate skill sets. And you start again, but this time you start with learning. You start with experience.
yeah, for sure. I totally resonate with that.
Yeah,
Same
it's amazing.
experience.
And what I'm finding, and I'm sure you're finding this as well in your environment, is that so much of our jobs now is about mentorship. You get these young Gareth Reeses that come in and they say,
Yeah.
"Yes, I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna park in the basement with my Ferrari when I'm
Yeah.
30." And you get these folks that come in and they think that life works like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for some people maybe it does, but for the vast majority,
Yeah.
there's this lovely thing called hard work.
Mm, mm.
You know,
Totally
there's,
agree.
there's this lovely thing called perseverance.
Mm,
There's this lovely thing called grit,
yeah.
and it's so much. And I find in my business as well, so much of my mentorship that happens. It's not just about doing the job; it's about mentoring this younger generation.
Mm.
Because one day when we're gone, they're going to have to take over, and that, my friend, is a challenge.
It is, but at the same time, what I realized is that, when you're young, right, you you can't completely take on the advice of people, even if it's right. Like I've come to realize things that people said to me 20 years ago that are absolutely true. But I'm
Mm,
glad I never listened to them at the time because then I wouldn't have done some of the stupid stuff that I've done. And
mm,
and I wouldn't have learned what I've learned and I wouldn't be who I am. So like for me, what's interesting is like the process of youth. I think it's almost by evolution that a
mm,
bit of stupidity is built into kids
mm.
to let them change stuff and break the mold and make mistakes. If we could pass on our knowledge completely to the next generation, I think we would lose out. I think there's something in the ridiculousness of youth that will take that risk and bang its head against the wall and not listen to your sage advice. That makes humanity special.
Yeah, it's true. You've always got such an interest. That's why I love talking to you. You've always got such a different perspective on a lot of things. I was actually interestingly having this conversation with someone earlier today, and I was talking to them about my kids, and I was saying to them that, when I grew up, we grew up. Education was everything, and you fell into a couple of buckets. You did IT, or you did law, or you did medical, or you did one of those, and just by the nature of our culture, we are pushed into these things, right?
Yeah.
And I was saying to this lady this morning that I have adopted such a different approach with my kids. I just will support them to do whatever it is that they have a passion for doing.
Yeah.
Whether that be if my daughter had to come to me and say she wanted to be a singer, I would support it.
I agree.
I would support it because the consequences of the decisions that she makes, she'd have to live with, not me. And
No,
it
I
comes
agree with that.
directly, it comes directly back to what you're saying around making. I mean, and we all did it when we started out our careers. We jumped from career to career and job to job, and eventually you find your way.
But there's also something there that I'm not sure about, and I think being a parent, you often are stuck on two sides of a coin, and you're not sure the answer. And if I think about it from my certainly my life, I mean, I studied biochemistry, and I've never done anything really since then that had anything to do with biochemistry. But my university experience wasn't just about what I studied. My university experience was one of the coolest experiences of my life.
Yeah.
Being there on campus with people and having fun and doing silly things and having these aspirations and dreams and mixing up with all kinds of different people at different parties, and then also having to at the same time work hard when you have a hangover to pass your exam and to get through it and have that tenacity to finish something. And I know you can, you look at all the Steve Jobs of the world, and they didn't finish their things. They just went straight into making money. My sense is this: life is actually, it's short, but it's long. If you were to add on 3 years extra before you start trying to make money, to go to university, to study anything, I don't mind what they study, but I'd like them to go, because the experience is so powerful. And, whether it's in humanities or whether it's in science or BCom or as you say, if they want to study drama, I don't think it really matters what you study. I think it's the process of choosing something, sticking it out, finishing it, and having that community the whole way along with you. That just was such a cool experience for me. And I'm glad I didn't, jump straight out of university with a business idea and I was straight into making money, because then you're missing the point. Like, money is not the point. We need enough money to have a good life, yeah, but once that starts going over R1 million a year, probably, and maybe it depends on your lifestyle, it doesn't actually contribute meaningfully to your happiness.
It's so true. It's so true.
And that you got to get from somewhere else. And if your only focus is to, as quickly as possible, get out of school so you can start running this race of life, I think you're really missing the point, because it's not a race.
Now, let me ask you this, fine sir. What is your view on purpose? Because we were talking about it and we alluded to it a bit earlier, but now the whole notion of waking up every day with a purpose. What's your view on that?
Look, I think purpose is probably one of the most important things you can have. I think without it, you can be depressed. And purpose means different things to different people. And purpose, for me at least, has changed throughout my life. In a lot of my life, I had a very selfish purpose. My purpose was to be better than other people. My purpose was to get ahead. But it kept me motivated. For that time in my life, the purpose was right. But then I got to a point where I had learned a lot, and then, as we discussed earlier, had a failure or two, and got me to reevaluate my ego, and it challenged my purpose. And that's what can put you in such a dark place, because you say, if I'm not earning a salary this month, and my wife and kids are looking at me and saying, where's it coming from? What's my purpose? Am I a failure? And is there any difference from the human being that I was 2 months before when everything was great to 2 months after when everything's bad? And I'm sitting there saying, what is my purpose? But actually nothing's changed other than the money that's coming to my bank account. And it's only then that I realized that my purpose was not about getting ahead. It was about contributing, obviously looking after my family. For me, that's number one. And then contributing meaningfully to a society that needs help. And it's not about South Africa. If you look at globally, it's the global climate change issue. It's wars all over the place. In South Africa, we've got massive social challenges, we've got infrastructural challenges, we've got poverty challenges. So I want to, and that's why I love innovation and disruption, because it's about being able to solve problems that can't be solved with the current way of thinking. So I don't think purpose is one thing. I think purpose is the thing that gets you up in the morning and keeps you driven. And if you don't want to get up in the morning and you're not driven, other than a chemical issue, I'm putting those aside, it's probably a purpose issue. And you need to find out what that is for you. And sometimes your purpose might be selfish, and that's okay, because you might need that for yourself at that time. But once you have, and I don't just again mean about money, once you have something to give, it's knowledge. I've done a lot of stuff in commercialization and innovation. So I love mentoring startups. I love mentoring scale-ups. In addition to my current job, I'm part of a few of those on the side. And I wake up for the daily stand-ups and I work late on those things and at night, because watching TV doesn't give me purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, Gareth, I mean, spot on, right? I mean, I can totally resonate with that. And I mean, now this leads us to, into more of the deeper side of the mind of Gareth Rees, which is around, so what is your current role and what are you currently doing? I mean, you've given us a little bit of a teaser there, but do you want to take us through what it is that you do
at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay. So I work at Deloitte. I'm saying I work with Deloitte, and I'm in the innovation leadership there, and it's really about getting corporates to drive innovation and commercialization of disruptive business models using corporate funding. So it's not your typical strategy stuff where you help them do the same thing better. It's about how do you get them to seed for a world of tomorrow. But what's interesting is that's only part of my life, and I love my job and I love the stability it brings, and the people I work with are amazing, and we've got this brilliant talent and a lot of brilliant black talent. I love it. Like, you're getting these people and they are so sharp. They're actuaries, they're scientists, they're engineers, they're business people, and they want to learn and they're hustling, and I love that space and it gives me energy. But I'm also part of two startups. So the one is a phenomenal company called CarScan, and they have an AI application that basically you scan with your phone and it picks up using AI any dent, scratch, panel that's out of place, and then it also integrates into other technology to give you kind of a 3D digital twin of the car. But then it links into all the back-end databases that it will then tell you what the damage is worth. It will cost. It gets the panel price from BMW if it's too bad, or it figures out the price to respray it if it's not so bad. So really clever AI in the background, and these guys are doing incredibly well. Small company but scaling, and I work with them. And another company actually that called the Y Corporation, and they doing amazing stuff in 3D printing. And you'll know quite a bit about that stuff, Sean. But doing a lot in small batch manufacturing for industrials, so mines, agriculture businesses, automotive businesses. So there's a lot of scope for that, and spending a lot of time with that technology and merging 3D printing with things like injection molding to make it sustainable. So yeah, those two companies give me a lot of energy and allow me that pressure release valve to be an entrepreneur. But I can still I'm still enjoying my very varied work at Deloitte that gives me huge challenge on some of the biggest problems in the country and across the globe. So I'm really feeling happy in my current, and then I mentor a few cool startups as well that I'm not part of, just mentorship. So I have a very, very full life, and I'm feeling great about it, a good balance.
I'm so glad to hear that, man. It really sounds like you found a really nice sort of space for yourself to, be stable, but yet also be explorative. Yeah. And also, tick all the boxes, which is fantastic. And what I'm finding more and more is that everyone's got a side hustle.
Yeah.
The guys that work for me as well. So everyone's got this little side hustle that's their passion project that they do on the side.
Mm.
Now, what I wanted to ask you was, how do you find these technologies, and are you constantly researching them? How do you find these companies?
Yeah, there's so many, to be honest, but I do a lot of reading, and that gives you the ideas of what's interesting and what's big globally. Then, I mean, South African innovation and startup sector's pretty small. So, just by being plugged into a few players that are in local VCs, that are on local funds, you get to know about, the top 50 companies that are doing stuff. And it's literally, between a 50 and 100 companies that are doing interesting stuff. So it's not an insanely large ecosystem. But once you start plugging into it, you see these guys coming up, and there's amazing technology coming up. And I'm blown away by, the 100% black companies that are starting in exponential technology and solving problems that other innovation hasn't solved for, solving problems in the township, solving problems, in informal economy, because these guys understand different jobs to be done, that have never been solved for before. So I'm incredibly excited about what I see in the emerging innovation domain. But we need more funds. We need more money going to these technologies. Corporate South Africa is pretty bad at adopting these technologies. It's we got a very risk-averse, CFO-driven approach, and that's a lot of what I do, is working with these big companies to understand failure and understand that failure is a part of progress. It's even part of the conversation that we were having earlier. Companies don't want to fail, but if they don't want to fail, it means they'll never do anything that has any risk. So it's really it's treading that line. So I don't see myself actually as an entrepreneur. I see myself, and not an entrepreneur either. I see myself as someone that understands the interface between startup, scale up, and big business. And that's kind of where I play.
And the challenge that a lot of these big corporates have is that when they have these funding mechanisms and vehicles like SD and ED and all of these things, they don't have the right skill set sitting around the table to assess these things. They typically have procurement people. They don't have a head of innovation, a head of strategy, they don't have those minds that are assisting these companies. So essentially, these funding mechanisms become a tick box exercise.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. And it needs to be challenged at the highest level, because it's been around for 20 years and it could have done so much more. The amount of money that's been funneled into social development is astronomical. And then you see situations where, one company is on 4 different programs and they're all getting money every year and it's not turning into anything. And these guys are, living the dream. And you're saying, this is not right. We need to go and funnel this money into really hungry entrepreneurs that want to make change. They want to engage with exponential technologies, and they want to do business. And then we must treat them, as you say, strategically and with an innovation lens. I mean, one of the things that I'm particularly interested in is you can go and build solar arrays, big solar farms that can be owned by communities, funded and paid for out of these funds. And then the power can serve a corporate as the offtake. So you give them a 20-year offtake agreement, and that basically becomes a 20-year revenue stream for a community. And then they have to look after those panels and make sure everything's working, and you're teaching them about electrical engineering, and you're actually going and creating a whole ecosystem that feeds off that the corporate needs, but it can be funded and also benefit the community. So there's so many cool things that can be done. We just need to change and reframe our thinking about how do we turn South Africa around and stop waiting for the government, because to be frank, the government's always been rubbish. Even the apartheid government was rubbish. It's not new. The government's rubbish. No. Let's do it ourselves. Let's go out there with the passion and the people that have the intention to make change and the balance sheets that are still quite flush, and make real change.
Yeah, and it's a leadership change. It's a leadership mindset change.
Yeah.
And it is about looking at real sustainability, not just about the bottom line.
The guys that stay will be like that. You'll see. The guys that don't want to go, I'm not knocking the guys that want to go, but the people that stay are the people that believe we can make change.
You have my vote, Mr. Rees. If you were standing
No,
up,
never. I won't
if
touch it ever.
if I was in a ballot box right now and I saw this and I listened to this and I saw your face, I would tick twice. I would put in 2 X's on
Yeah,
that
tick
name
twice,
because
Sean.
no, it's incredible. Your positivity is just amazing, man. It really, really is.
Oh, yeah.
Just the way that that you look at things is really, really remarkable, and I applaud you for that.
Thanks, Sean.
It's really, really cool. And I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'm going to ask you before we move on.
Mhm.
Whenever I think about Gareth Rees, I think about the story you told me when you were going and you had two directors in your car,
Oh, no.
and you were going to a you were going
Yeah.
to a client. You were going to a client. Can we talk about it?
Yeah, why not?
Okay,
It's actually one of the only things I regret in my life, and it's not because of actually what happened. It's because I killed something so special, and I don't mean no one actually died, but I
Yeah.
had an R33 GTR with
Yeah.
600 horsepower on the wheels. It was a beast. It was the coolest car that can be owned, and
Yeah.
hey.
Absolutely, absolutely. Carry on.
And then we were going for a final sales pitch at one of the large commercial banks in the middle of Sandton. And I had 2 directors from Deloitte in the car with me. I think I was a senior consultant or a manager or something young in the business at that time. And they're like, yeah, cool, Gareth, show us what this thing's all about. And I hammered it, going,
Which Gareth Rees does all the time.
many Ks over the speed limit. It's getting to like factors and multiples, not numbers.
Yeah.
And then someone pulled in front because they obviously didn't expect that I was going that fast. They just saw a car at one point 100 meters behind them and moved. But
Yeah.
obviously I was going a lot quicker than that, and there was nowhere to go. And T-boned the car. No one was hurt, but I destroyed my GTR, which is a very sad thing, very very sad thing indeed. But that car was going to kill me. So
Yeah, no.
yeah.
Yeah, but that the story is not what I'm getting to. The first time you told me the story,
Yeah.
it was amazing. And we do irresponsible things sometimes, and sometimes to say what it is, to say it as it is, shit happens, and it was not your intention to harm anyone, and everyone was fine. But the first time you told me that story, it was the second part of the story that stuck with me more than the first part. You said to me the next day,
Not the next day, the same day.
was it the same day that you went back to the office?
Yeah, the same day I went back to the office. I caught a lift back to the office, and I went around and I told every single person that I could see in the building what I'd done.
I mean, that is priceless, man. Most of us would be hanging our heads in shame, resigning, not wanting to come back. You took it on the chin, and you made it. You even said to me, you made it fun. You made it a joke. You told everyone, and you embraced it. And
You gotta own these things, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You gotta own your shit. And it is amazing.
You make mistakes and you own it. That's one of the biggest lessons I'm trying to teach my kids is just if you make a mistake, it's okay. But don't tell me it was someone else. Don't tell me the thing was broken, or just say, I did this and I'll do better. Own your stuff. That's all we got.
Yeah, amazing. We're running out of time, and you're going to be load shed in a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gareth, it's always so much fun talking to you, man. It's thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for joining us. And there's so much more we need to talk about in terms of innovation. And I really was hoping to dig into the Magnavane stuff that you were doing and your lessons there and all that, but we'll do that another time. But Mr. G, it has been such a privilege to have you on. Your mindset, sir, is something that I really, really, you left me thinking, that I need to change my mindset a little bit in terms of the way I see things. And I hope that everyone listens to this can actually hear how much fun we've had, because it's just been amazing speaking to you as always. But I wish you all the best and all the success. And thank you for being part of the High Level Podcast.
Thank you for this very authentic show you have. I think it's awesome. And keep bringing on brilliant people to tell brilliant stories so we can learn from real people and be better tomorrow than we were today.
Thank you, Gareth. Good people, and this is the end of our show. As always, if you're going to do one thing only, and that is stay inspired. Cheers.